Waiting, connecting.
Hi,
There
babe.
you are.
Hold on. Let me turn down the TV because I'm just gonna show the I'm actually watching.
Yes. Yes, I
Listen,
love
it's
that.
it's been so many years. How the fuck do I turn this off? Sorry, am I allowed to cuss on your channel?
Of course you can cuss. Yes, we keep it real up in this piece. Oh
Listen,
my
okay,
God.
wait. Let me make sure it's positioned correctly and it's not showing my kitchen, which probably has a pile of dishes to wash. I'm shocked that I'm alive and awake at this time. So
No, thank you for doing this, West Coast. I know, because do you stay up late every night? Pretty much? Like, are you like a night owl?
I'm very much a night owl. Yeah, I like to stay up very, very late. And in these times, I really kind of utilize that late night time. And you know how much I love to fabricate and craft things. So
Uh-huh,
I
uh-huh.
can, sometimes you know what, I will do it until the sun comes up, you know, and I'm just having a good time and I don't realize that time passes by. And
So you get
I,
in the zone and you're using this quarantine time to sew, create, bring your magic to
mm-hmm.
life. Well, I can only imagine what you're coming up with.
You know, people have been asking me, they're like, what have you know, how do you feel? Are you okay? What's going on with you? And I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
totally fine. I've always been a little bit of a loner. So,
Hmm.
like, this time being by myself in my apartment has been sort of nice, you
Yeah.
know? I don't know. But
Well, I think
I do miss being out. I miss going to, like, happy hours and, like,
look,
you
he's
know.
like getting together, putting the look together, going out.
Right.
I know it's, I before we even dive into the kind of the light and the fun of the behind the scenes America's Next Top Model Cycle 8, I feel like we really do need to talk just for a moment about what's really going on in terms of this civil rights movement, which is now officially the biggest one ever worldwide with in history. And I think, for me personally, I mean, there's so much I could say, but the one thing that is the most concerning to me, and just speaking to other amazing hair makeup talent, black hair makeup talent, and actually two really well-known actors, I was so frightened by what they said to me, how their team, like their team of managers, et cetera, around them, had advised them to remain quiet during this time because, quote unquote, when we get on the other side of this, you're going to need those allies and those people to hire you. And I thought, for when I heard this, I mean, it really shocked me to my core, because that just made me realize these power struggles, this abuse of power, which is tied into this systemic racism, is still in play, because the real way we're going to affect change and really make Black Lives Matter is allowing people, in those positions to hire and
Mm-hmm.
and elevate and promote people of color. That's what we need to kind of help change this. And I was really hurt. I mean, I was really on the phone. I was just like, they said what? So that's why they're like being a little more quiet and not posting, and I thought, oh, the power struggle is still there.
I don't have a team. I have a manager.
Yeah,
I suppose I do have a team, but you know, this is a very, very crucial time in American history, you
yeah.
know, and both of us have traveled quite a bit, and we've seen how things function in different parts of the world.
Hmm.
Everything that is happening now is so profoundly, we will never forget 2020. Let's put it that way. You know,
Of course.
there are so many issues. There's a pandemic. There's, racism we're talking about. And you know what? Today just happens to be the anniversary of the Pulse shootings 4 years ago, which
Oh,
I
I didn't
still
even
remember.
remember that. Oh my
Yep, that's
gosh, yeah, it's
today.
today.
It's
Wow.
today, and I remember when it happened 4 years ago, and I remember the following day was New York Pride, and I had to be on a float all by
Hmm.
myself.
How did
And
you feel?
I was terrified. I remember
Yeah,
going through the streets of New York because I was on like a corporate float for American Express,
sure, sure.
and I was a singular person on this float going through millions of people in the city just the day after, close to 50 people were shot at a nightclub that I had previously worked at. I'd been to Pulse. I know what the restrooms looked like, where those kids
Wow.
hid. You know, I remember everything. I remember the stage. I remember everything about Pulse. So it really kind of, it was very emotional, and it was quite scary because you really you really saw the police, and I mean, they had guns out, like out in the street, and
Yeah.
you know, it was an interesting time. So, but you know, I think that in this time, I think a little bit of lighthearted conversation
Yes, so that's what we're
about,
gonna dig into.
yeah,
Like
you know,
who?
if we could, we would talk to each other for hours in front of people, but we probably have a smaller window of time. I
Smaller
don't
window, yeah, I know, because you and I, we can just talk, and then we look and we're like, "Oop, did an hour go by?" Like,
know.
it's crazy, and it's interesting to me, you know, just before we dive into this America's Next Top Model again, that it's having this resurgence. People are watching it during quarantine on like Hulu and Amazon Prime, and so this is a great time to kind of talk about the behind the scenes dish of which you and I are very, very. We were witness to. We saw. I know the look, Sutan. This is what you would do when things would go down. You'd be like, okay, like you just
I'm
give your
going
look
that
away.
way.
I'm going. I'm right over here. I'll be right over there. But you know what? Talk about cycle 8. Can I tell you one of my favorite moments of the whole cycle, which actually had nothing to do with what anyone saw on screen, was when we went, because this is the cycle we went to Australia. You'd already been working on the show for several cycles, and we scored tickets to Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, the stage production, before it came to the US. It was in Sydney. So it was you, Tyra, Miss J, and myself went to see the show, and we had great seats, and they took us backstage beforehand. And
they spoiled the shit out of us. They like, oh my God. Remember how those costumes were tiered in the back? I actually saw Priscilla here in LA, and it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same show.
I saw the New York version, actually, and the New York version was pretty close. They had tweaked the show, but I wasn't, it was pretty close. But what I remember the most was you and I gagging right in Act 1. When we saw the makeup changes, they went from being men to full drag, and then quick change and come out as a man again. And you and I were like, wait, what? Wait, how?
Yeah, we were like clutching onto each other probably.
How? And then they took us backstage after and showed us the secret, because they did live casts of all the actors' faces, and I think they did like, it was like a silicone appliance, like a mask basically, that when slapped onto the face with just foundation, which they had on, and from the audience perspective, it looked like full drag, and all they had to do is do hot change lips.
I want that. I actually want that now. They were acrylic, and I want that now, because getting into drag is such a chore for me that I would like to just kind of fucking pluck on a little. Yep.
And go, and then throw the wig on, and be done.
Wig tape. Yep. That's it. That's all I need.
we
But
need to find a company to do that.
You know, I'm not sure if I watched the first photo shoot, but is season 8 the one where they had the politics as part of like their theme?
No, it was not this photo shoot. So we can do a quick rundown. So this cycle, we started off with the whole boot camp casting, where Miss J and I were like drill sergeants, and it was, the girls actually slept in real barracks. Like, this was the one casting I felt sorry for them, because normally they stay in a hotel for casting and they have their own rooms, but they were in barracks. Like, it was, I felt so badly for them. But that was this casting. Like literally, we were in a like an army camp facility. I don't even remember where it was. It was somewhere in LA. But yeah, and this is the shoot. This is the show where one of our early photo shoots, and I remember you and I had many discussions about this, was the crime scene victims.
I just watched that, and it was crazy.
That because was one of my favorite shoots.
It was a fun one, because we really got to like apply the idea of special effects into stuff, and I had to find certain people to help me with that, because I wasn't, you know, that wasn't my scene at all. But now you know what the kids probably don't know that you would do? This is how prepared you always were, which for me, it made my job just so much easier. We would have like our production meetings of what the shoots were coming up, and then you'd go away, and then we'd always sit down, you know, it's like you, Christian, Mark, and then when Charlie was there, we'd look at the you know, the concept, but this was Sutan. Sutan would show up and like,
Okay, so for Renee, I have full illustration drawing. Like you would always do these illustrations of what the makeup would look like and the hair, because you would talk to Christian. That just made my life so much easier because you have no idea. It just helped me kind of realize this when I was working with the photographers as to what we were trying to do. And Mike Rosenthal shot this, and we were in that creepy ass old building downtown LA.
The Alexandria.
We were petrified because I swear to God that place was haunted. I mean,
yes. The Alexandria has a amazing history. I believe the Alexandria might have been the hotel that they modeled American Horror Story after. But now that entire area, the hotel one with Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the area, it was one of those hotels. But anyway, that area now is completely gentrified, and the Alexandria Hotel is now having its whole new resurgence, and it doesn't look anything like that. So we got to see it.
It was scary.
It was frightening. There was like actual blood. There was blood.
Yeah, and people asked. I remember people asking, did we like kind of, set direct the place? Like all we did was, I remember when I scouted that place, I had goosebumps because I was scouting with Mike. This was off camera, and we were like, okay, we'll shoot this here, shoot this here. Literally, I was like, okay, we got to get out of here because there was blood and like bullet holes in the wall, and it was
sort of a dangerous hotel because it was kind of it was a place where people like paid weekly or even daily to live there, and people actually did live there.
Oh, I know. Anyway. I remember seeing people walk through. Yeah, it was really creepy. But we've got tons and tons of questions, and there were so many for you. Again, because they knew you were going to be here. So,
well, what I wanted to say before we really dig into this is because I've been watching. I watched it days ago when we were planning this. But there's a lot of themes in this season that really have a significance now. I don't think like mental health. There's, voguing.
That was because we had Benny Ninja on the show doing all his stuff and teaching the girls.
That's right. Drag, because Raven.
Raven,
Raven, and my daughter Rhea Latre was on it too. I wrote some notes. There was the Paris and Nicole moment, which was very significant as well. When they're at the party.
Yes.
And you know what? I mean, there's an elephant in the room to this season that I find a little bit like maybe there was a curse to it, because we gotta talk about JL and Renee.
Yeah. A lot of people saying, rest in peace, JL, who's no longer with us, and then and Renee. I mean, it was just so, I don't think it was something we could see at the time.
Not at all.
And
they were girls. They were young women. We didn't. What no one knew. They were cast. They were cast for a specific, personality or character on the show, and they did what they did. And who knew that years later? I mean, JL only passed away 2 years ago. I googled it. I was like, And I actually remember seeing JL at like some clubs in West Hollywood, and we would have a great time together. And never did I realize that both of those girls' fate, and I'm also now really quite curious to see what's happened to the rest of them. I still keep in contact with Jasleen through social media and through Facebook, and I'd seen her in some gigs in Chicago, and she's still the same gal. She's just like vibrant and Latinx as fuck, and she is, And the other thing that was really interesting to me in this season, it might have been, was it the first time that there was an introduction to plus size models?
No, because we introduced that back in, I guess our first plus size model officially was, I think, Takara. I mean,
That's right.
Yes. So and Takara, and she was just a huge inspiration for so many, women. And she hosted Jay's Chat the last time I did it, and But I think we were having more of a discussion in this cycle. I think it was more important. And for me, when it came to, because a lot of people have asked about Jael, and I just want to re-stress one of the things I've talked about in previous chat is that when we do the castings, the girls come in and meet with, Miss J, Tyra, and myself, but they go out of our room and they literally go into 3 other rooms where 3 independent psychologists, they get an evaluation, and all the psychologist evals have to come out, you know, with either like a pass, they had a red, an orange, and a green. And so the green was obviously totally mentally, capable to be on the show, and then orange, and then red were not allowed to be on the show. And so these girls went through psychological evaluation as well. And so if they were to get through that, we didn't know, no one knew that they had these struggles. But then, what's interesting is, and it's a question coming up, I noticed, someone asked about JL, because this happened with Kaylin in cycle 4, if you recall, with the Deadly Sins photo shoot. Basically, we had 2 kind of shoots that dealt with death. And then on those 2 seasons where we did that, a contestant happened to have someone who passed away because JL had her friend, found out that her friend died of an overdose.
Right.
And then we were doing this crime scene victim shoot. So the question, and I'll read whoever asked it when we scroll through now, but that was not planned. It's never the intention of production. Like we produce these because we have these meetings before we even start shooting.
Right.
Like what we're doing.
And as I was watching it, I just had to write down these things because I feel like there were so many things that maybe like were a premonition.
Yes, kind of in a weird way. Yeah,
really, really, really interesting and sort of haunting to watch it again because I hadn't seen any of these episodes in so many years. What year was Cycle 8?
So Cycle 8 would have been It would have been 2006, 2005. Yeah, end of 2005 or beginning of 2006 is when we would have shot Cycle 8. Somewhere there.
Wow.
So think about it. It has been, it's like 15 years ago, 14 years ago for us. And then I really, when it aired, I would watch, but I would never sit and rewatch these episodes. So yes, like digging into it again, in a weird way, it seems like another life, but in an odd way, it feels like it was last month. Like it's so bizarre when you watch some of this. Yeah. Except the fashions. I look at myself, I'm like, girl. Like,
oh, honey. I mean, like, I'm looking at what the girls are wearing. I'm like, wow, there was no online shopping. There was no Instagram or influencers to help you with fashion. They were all just getting it straight from the mall, and they look like it. You know?
Well, whereas now the kids, they snatch it together because, fast fashion, you can do stuff. So yeah.
Right.
So our first question, there's so many questions for you, and I'm glad that everyone is like Sutan. So the first one, her name is MKSL8ER_2.0. It's the hardest name I hope I said it right. So it goes, Sutan, I absolutely love you. I want to know, working backstage with this cast of girls, what type of drama did you see, and did you end up annoyed with some of them? Like I was constantly annoyed with Brittany, red honey badger weave she got for her makeover. So she wanted to know if you got annoyed backstage because you're with the girls doing the creative.
That weave is the most epic weave of
her
all
and
time.
JL's was like.
I don't mean to laugh at it, but now in hindsight, it is pretty funny. But you know what? I think now, there was a lot of things that I took from America's Next Top Model that I brought with me to being a contestant on Drag Race because of the similarities of the shows. I already understood what the girls went through, and I realized that editing is a part of it, but you provide the information to the editors
too. Yeah.
Right, but you are the person who provides that information. So it made me very savvy to going on to Drag Race. I knew what was up, and I knew what the gig was, and I knew when the cameras were on, and I knew when the cameras were off. I knew what on ice meant, which means shut the fuck up, don't talk to each other until the cameras come on. So I had all this familiarity with it, with all of it, and it sort of worked to my advantage. But you know what?
Did you get annoyed with the girls? Like were there times?
I did. I was, and a lot of times they were very early shoots, and
and you just said you're not a morning person. And let me tell you guys, Sutan would be like, really? Okay, what time because you would ask me, you'd say, well, what time do I have to be there? I'm like, girl, I need you set up. Because our call times were sometimes 5:30 in the morning, 6 a.m., like on set.
Right.
Yeah,
I was a different gal then, I was definitely out and partying a lot. And so those early mornings were quite painful for me. You know, I'll be 46 in 2 days. Those moments are
Happy
rare.
birthday, 46.
Thank you.
I'm 47. I'm trying to hold. Obviously, I'm holding on to
Hey!
46. But yeah.
Yeah, but those moments are definitely far and few between now. But yeah, the girls definitely annoyed me. They were very needy. They were babies. They were like girls who had no training most times in the fashion world or in the modeling world, and yeah, so they were annoying and they were dramatic, and they, you know, all the personalities that you see were pretty much exactly how they were.
Yeah,
I don't think they were.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
exactly how they were. Exactly. And, you know, and I think I would catch things because, you know, I would always come into hair and makeup and make sure everything's going on. But I notice they shift when I walk in the room because they know Jay's notes get written up. They get put, Tyra reads them at judging. So I noticed the shift with me. So I was always curious what you guys were experiencing. I remember
Well,
there were some funny times when you'd come out and you're like, girl, like I know you'd be like, she's pushing me.
Well, I don't know if you knew this about me yet, Jay. After many years of knowing each other, I'm a little bit of a ham, you know, and I always knew that if Jay was around, the camera was going to be there. So if you look at some of these old episodes, I'm always looking over your shoulder, like,
Yeah, oh, of course I caught it. You're like, uh-huh. Yeah.
Look at all this long black hair. Yes.
Which is now beautifully silver.
Yes, it's there. Yeah.
So now this is Dio I don't want to mess up his name. Dio Gioaccherelli. Oh, that's the person's name. I'm sorry if I messed up your name. It says, did Sutan know Raven before this photo shoot? Did you guys know each other beforehand?
Yes, of course, because you know what? It was up to me to try to help find the drag queens because I was local. I was a local makeup artist, and I was also a local drag queen. So I think, yeah, because all of those people that with the exception of maybe 2 others that were never really featured.
Yeah.
Wasn't there like 1 or 2 other guys that were doing that drag episode?
Yep. There were a bunch. Yeah, we didn't even see on camera. But this was a perfect example. We were just this team when it came to a lot of the creative, and I felt like the show. I mean, I had the opportunity to work with some incredible people on the show and bring in great photographers from Patrick Deschillier to all these major people, but the team of like core creative talent that, you know, we created, I felt like it had this like magic, and we had like a rhythm when we were working together. You know, I felt like I didn't even half the time. I was just like, oh, I know Sutan and Christian got this. Like, I don't even need to see because some shoots were just so crazy. I'm like, I can just see the girls when they come to set because I know you guys would just land it. You know, I didn't have to worry about that part, which was a huge like weight off my back because it was crazy sometimes, you know, working these shoots. Someone else said, which was your favorite photo shoot or least favorite shoot this cycle and why? Oh, and this is the person that said the death photo shoot was mine and Brittany's male swimsuit version and Jaslene's grunge one. And this came from QUE_WIRA. So thank you for your question. So what was your favorite shoot or least favorite shoot this season?
My favorite shoot and my favorite look that I ever did, probably on the history of my time
the history? Oh my God, you did so much.
Okay, maybe not the history, but one of my favorites was definitely this season was the high school shoot, where I got to transform Jasleen into the weirdo, and her and I had already bonded at that point. I realized that she was an actual drag queen. And so she was really kind of like fun to work with. And so immediately when she was given that look, I went with it because it was something that I could relate to. I was definitely that kid, which is kind of ironic because, you know, I grew up in a very Latin and Black neighborhood here in Southern California, and I wanted to be a goth kid so bad, but goth really kind of belonged to white kids, and I wanted to be it so bad, and so I had to kind of modify my goth a little bit at the time, and it was like when I got to Jasleen, I got to kind of unleash on her.
Unleash it.
Yeah, like this is how I would have really liked to look in high school, you know, and. But that's definitely
I didn't
That's
know that was one
definitely,
of your favorite looks. That's amazing. I mean, of course I remember, but I didn't know that that was like one of your all-time faves.
yeah, that's
Cool.
definitely, that one really, I could relate to, and I was moved by it the most, I
A lot
think.
of people are writing down below, and I know I have a question coming up to address it, so we'll get there. They're saying, like, let's get to Renee, let's get to Renee. But let's answer the next question. This is from Blundis. All these usernames today are crazy. BLUNDISSERTIATION. Blunder cessation. Okay. She goes, I noticed that by this cycle, you stopped doing all the challenges during panel elimination. How come? That's actually a good question. What they realized is what people don't realize is when we actually were shooting the little challenges in judging, it made the judging day go for like,
Longer.
oh my God, we would shoot for like 11 hours and the judges were not having it because those challenge setups just took so much time. And then in the edit, they'd go like this, boom, 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 boom. And then the focus would be on, the girl's
None of
photo
that.
shoot and her presentation and the judges' evaluation. So they just got rid of it because it just like, it wasn't playing that much. So that was really the reason.
Yeah,
Uh,
I really actually, when I finally got to do one of the judges, which was Twiggy,
mhm.
I really
And you
enjoyed
did
that part.
Paulina's makeup as well,
And I
right?
did Paulina's too.
Paulina
And
Porskova, two
actually,
legends.
I wonder if she's watching. I told her to watch this. I told her we were going to come on, but
Okay.
she's gardening in Millbrook or some shit like that. But what were we talking
Looking
about?
fab as ever.
We were
Oh,
talking.
wait.
Oh, I was
Yeah.
saying how I really, really enjoyed the judging. Like to me, it was like the complete like BTS fantasy.
I know you
Like I,
sit right on the fourth wall and you clutch your pearls because
yeah, we're
because
all
they
just
were
sitting there. We're
go
just
ahead,
sitting there
sir.
eating the. We're just sitting there eating the craft service, with a Diet Coke and a bag of Sun Chips, and
Yeah.
just watching the tea explode in front of us. And it was, I loved it. That was my favorite part.
Yeah, and I love how you said the tea explode because unlike the famous meltdown cycle, which we already talked about, which was the Tiffany Tyra meltdown, there were several like mini meltdowns, meltdown 2.0, 3.0, 4.0 from different judges, girls, and things played in judging, but there were things that didn't play. Like we know there were certain feathers ruffled. I know several times, but I loved Twiggy, by the way. As a person, she's so real. She's amazing. She must have been
Oh,
fun working with, right?
she was amazing to work with, even though she forgot my name because apparently she was a judge on Drag Race, and she did a podcast with RuPaul and Michelle Visage.
Uh,
And she was like, "Yeah, in fact, there was a drag queen who used to do my makeup on Top Model."
and she
And
couldn't remember your name.
they were like,
Oh,
"Raja." And she was like, "Raja? Who's Raja?" Sutan. And she was like, "Oh, yeah, that's his name." And I was
yeah,
like,
because they're not used to Raja. I mean, of course, I know you as Raja, and I've watched you on Drag Race. But you're still Sutan to me. I have to go.
"Of
I have to go with
course."
Sutan. And a lot of people, a few people, the comments are going by so quickly. But a couple people said there are a bunch of things about you, Twiggy. Oh, I can't even keep up
Well,
there. But
Twiggy was really interesting because, of course, she's one of the most iconic models you can ever think of, like, from the 60s. And from the stories that we shared together, I learned that her career only spanned 4 years or some really, really small window of time.
oh yeah,
And
yeah.
she told me about the first time that she got to meet Andy Warhol and
Mm,
how he was so terrifying to her because she came from a very working class part of
yeah,
London, and he
yeah.
was just like really over the top for her. And her relationship with Paul McCartney and being Stella McCartney's godmother, like just shit like that. And I would just
Oh
like be,
wow.
and she
You
would
just
never.
Yeah, and
It was
she was
just
so humble.
information.
Just yeah,
Yeah.
just humble. A couple of people have written there, and we'll get back to the questions because everyone's going Renee, blah blah blah, all that stuff. But a few people actually wrote because, well, as obviously I have my novel coming out on August 3rd.
Yes.
But people have asked, is Sutan in the book? So I don't, Sutan, you've not read it yet, but Sutan, what my book actually does, because it is a fictional world, I wanted to have and honor really amazing creative talent from the real world enter the fictional world because it takes place in New York City in 2021. And so actually, Raja makes an appearance in the book. So I don't know if you know that, but I can't wait for you to read because I have to pay homage to because you were the creator of the show for so long. And so you are in the book.
Listen, don't judge me for being yes!
That's just a galley. It's not a real book, but it's a proof.
Don't judge me for being a stoner, because being a stoner, I get into some details, and as I was watching these episodes, there was something about do you sing?
Yes, I do. I came to New York as an opera singer, and I trained.
That's right.
Yes.
I was gonna say, do you sing? Because every time I listen to your voice, there's something so soothing about it, and I can't wait for the book on audio. And I want you to read, and you need to read it.
Well, that's happening. It is happening. So the Dennis Velez had a question. Cycle 8 had some big personalities and interesting cast members. What was your reaction to the life after ANTM for Renee and JL? Were you surprised about what happened to them both? I think we kind of talked about it, but I was definitely shocked. It's not like we knew anything. It was very shocking.
Shocking. I mean, any bad news like this, Renee's in prison for 12 years. I had to Google it. I didn't really quite know because I had gone on with my life and, I explored so many different other avenues that I hadn't really been quite paying attention to what was happening to cast members of a show that I worked on years ago, so I was really pretty clueless.
So you have to kind of catch up. Yeah.
I did have to catch up, and I suppose there were signs of her craziness, but it only worked to the advantage of making a reality show. But
craziness doesn't necessarily mean, drug abuse. And I remember when she went on Dr. Phil, and it is difficult because we really do bond because people don't realize we shoot 7 days a week. And we bond as a group with each group of girls. So when you hear these things, it does affect you. And it was really difficult to deal with. So,
but to be fair to Renee, I actually had wonderful moments with her, especially when we were like in Australia, and there were really beautiful windows of time that I spent with Renee, and she was a wonderful gal. She was, she was very driven, which could be interpreted as crazy. But there were times when she was a little obnoxious. But who would have guessed?
By the way, I think Anda just gave us a hey guys, hey boys. I think they're on here. I'm just catching some of them as they go by. I know it's like so much to get through. But I didn't mean to interrupt you. But you can finish your thought. It's just we bond. We definitely bond. Yeah.
Yeah, but with Renee, I realized the severity and the danger of drugs and what that can do to someone and how it can take you to a place where things don't make sense anymore, and that in itself is a disease. Any sort of addiction of that sort is a disease, and and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that happened to her, and I really actually, I missed JL. I saw her years after the show had aired, and I had some really wonderful times with her at Foo Bar in West Hollywood.
Yeah.
I'm it's very sad.
And we have another Renee question here. And by the way, there's lots of people like David St. John, one of our producers, is on. He's saying hey. And then
hi David.
A couple other drag race superstars. Everyone's like commenting, and it's hard to catch everybody's name.
I think I saw Miss Vanjie in there.
Yeah, Miss Vanjie is on. I saw her. Hey, girl.
Hey, Miss Vanjie.
Another question from Mo _Peak says, a lot of girls like Renee complained about not having help after the show. The show seems to have so many connections in the industry. Why don't front runners like the top 5, for example, receive help after production if they truly have potential? And I think that's a great question. Thank you for your question. I think the difficulty, first of all, what is tricky, this is from my vantage point, of course, a lot of the girls who were in those top groups, like, even someone like Anne from Cycle 3, the Eva cycle, we're still friends today, and she's gone on to become a big model, but she was driven to keep working it. I know I had recommended her. I have actually hired Anne for jobs.
Right.
So it's like, yes, there are those girls, but then there were other girls that would kind of move back home. They weren't, it's really, it's an effort. Like being in the industry, you have to work your connections. I would definitely help who I could, and
Yes.
I know, Sutan, you would do the same. You're like, hey girl, da 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 da. So it's like, but it's how driven are you, like in this industry as a whole, you gotta keep working. Like, it's like
Amen.
people think we rely on our name. I can tell you with this book right now, I am working every day till 11 at night on stuff. It's like, you
Yeah.
got to work like 3 times as hard. You can't just rely on, oh, I did the show, or, oh, I have this name. You got to keep
Right.
working. I know Issa Rae says the same thing. She like pounds it every night, and she's like a bona fide superstar,
Yeah. I think what people don't realize about being a reality television contestant is that it is not the responsibility of the production to hold your hand for the rest of your fucking life. It's like
Exactly.
you were given, and this is probably what my advantage was because of knowing how Top Model worked. Because I knew that the work was going to come after.
After. First of
Yeah.
all, you slayed Drag Race, like you slayed the kids, and then
But you know what?
you knew what to do after.
I never expected RuPaul to hold my hand or,
Uh-huh.
for the rest of my life. I mean, at the time I won RuPaul's Drag Race, I was already 36 years old. It's like, I don't expect anyone to show me how to do a career. I already had a career. This was just a building of a certain new one in a new industry. And I have to put the work into it. And I think the mistake or the idea that people have about reality TV is that, that we are responsible after. You get on it and then you do the work after to
And
sustain yourself.
Miss Vanjie's chime in, and she's like, "Yes, like preach,
Yeah, if you
go."
want
She's
to
like,
if
yeah.
you want to if you want to continue in the process and be relevant, as they call it today, you have to put in the work. The only reason
Keep working.
why I've been able to stay busy after 10 years of being on Drag Race is the fact that I
You
know I have
drive
to
it.
work.
You
I
got to
have to
work.
work.
Yep.
I have to work with people. Therefore, you have to have good manners when you show up to the gig. Professionalism. It's just, you have to do the work. And it's not just because you get to be on the show doesn't mean that it's all handed to you and that people will guide you for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
It's up to you.
Preach. It really is up to you. And and I think that's the difficult thing, especially for, a lot of, young kids today, and especially the culture we're in now. It's like, oh, I get followers on Instagram. It's like a bit of this Insta fame, and you're like, you can rely on that. Actually, no, you still got to do the work. You got
You
to
have
do
to do
the
the
work,
work.
regardless.
Yes.
So yeah. Mo Peak actually has another question. Why did they make Brittany keep that raccoon of a wig on her head so long, even after she said she was a
Man, that epic,
that
that
wig.
ugly ass. I mean, you know what? It was a different time,
Okay, no, I'm
now.
not pour tea. Let me pour tea. Here's the tea. When Tyra said JL was even going to get that weave at makeovers, I said, her hair's short. She looks good with short hair. Why are we putting a weave on her? I'm going to say it. Tyra just wanted her to have a weave. And then, I remember Miss J and I going, we tried to fight Tyra on this weave. And these weaves, I was just like, they're not working. You can't take girls with short hair and put a full weave in. And it just, yeah, I'm going to say I definitely protested. But sometimes, I get shut down. I was not the host of the show.
I think I remember your protest because that weave was something that we talked about quite often because it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And
Jay's laughing. He's writing ha 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 because he knew. And to be the real tea is you remember my protest because this was one of the times I know Tyra and I really rarely fought with like. We never went there because that wasn't our relationship. But this was one of those times when Tyra told me, Jay, she's getting this weave. And I was like, I knew that was my time to zip it and do as I was told. So, I had to respect her. It was her thing. I didn't get into a fight beyond that. But of course, the weave then came out because, she wasn't cute at all.
Oh my God, I felt so bad. I've had back in the early 90s, I've had my hair braided. And I've had cornrows put in my hair, and I know the pain and hair bleaching. Like,
Mhm.
I know what scalp
Hello.
pain.
You
I
do
know
know
what
the only
I
gray I have is right here in my sideburns right now at my age. This is still black. So yes, I go through
bitch,
it.
you started a trend way back then,
Yeah,
way
no one
back
was doing
then.
silver at the time,
No,
right?
not at all. Very, very.
Except when I was in LA, when I take a shower because the water is so hard there, it strips my silver toner out. It would go yellow. It would drive me crazy. But
Is that
then I
true?
learned, yeah, the water is so hard in LA and the minerals in it strip the toner out with one wash. Whereas out here on the East Coast, I don't have that problem. I can just shower normal. But yeah, that's why when I go to LA, you want to know the real fucked up thing? If I go to LA now and I gotta keep my hair and I gotta wash it, I literally buy just jugs of water and like I shampoo my hair over the sink before I get in the shower. No
Oh my
joke. That's
God.
so
Oh
bougie. I
my
can't believe
God.
I said that live. But anyway, can't.
I
So
don't.
this.
Washing your hair with bottled water isn't that bougie. It's okay.
Oh, okay, good. Thanks. Okay. So we have a question from Cameron _ 91. Do you think Cassandra should have gone further? She had so much potential, loved her cheerleader pick with
Hmm.
all the attitude showing. What do you think about Cassandra? Should she have gone? Because she was
Cassandra is this
eliminated.
girl.
She was
Cassandra's
eliminated in episode 3.
right. She's the girl
Yeah.
with that had this
Hmm.
makeover.
Hmm.
Yeah. I No, she should have gone. You know, she
It's
was
like she should have
there.
gone.
I think people get so connected to the personalities that
Yeah.
that you see, and they're so endearing, and you relate to them.
And
But
we're trying to do the work of like who has what it takes to be a model, who can stand there, who has the
right,
tenacity, who has this, fierceness, who
fierceness.
can
Yeah.
command the presence. Some of
Hmm.
these girls, and it's like the real fashion industry. You can see beautiful, like the most stunning models ever, and then they don't shoot well. And then you see
Yeah.
someone who might look a little off or quirky, but they're legendary. Like a perfect example, fellow Canadian, grew up near me. I was born in the States, but grew up in Toronto. And it was Linda Evangelista. I remember when she was coming up before she became Linda Evangelista, and she was in like the catalogs and stuff in Toronto. And it's like, there's something a little quirky about her, but she's stunning. But if you looked at like just her nose or her jawline, you wouldn't say, oh, that's what we call like the perfect
Sure.
model, whatever. But she was the total package. She was
Yeah. Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so yeah.
By the way, remember Stacy, the girl the freckly girl, the
Of
model
course,
that
I've done her makeup, Stacey McKenzie. Yeah,
she is the new host of Canada's Drag
Canada's Drag Race.
Race.
I know.
I
Oh, I know. Yes,
Every time I see her image, I always think of you because I knew that you did her makeup quite a
I did her
bit.
makeup. I've done. Oh, Stacey and I were friends. Like we even did like a photo shoot in my house once. I mean, yeah, Stacey's fantastic, and yeah, and she actually would do the runway stuff for me on Canada's Next Top Model. Yeah.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
All
another
right.
question from Carl. I think it's Carl Tufer. I think that's like 2. But anyway, how did you choose the right photos? The good, and not so good for judging. Was it scripted? I mean, I'm really intrigued because I'm sure everyone must have their good photos after every shoot. So I think I've talked about this before, but I think it's a great thing to talk about again. So what would really happen is after a girl would shoot, and even if there was a little downtime, I would sit through the film on set. Sometimes they would show it. And I would edit down the film, and I would do like a rating system of 5 stars and down to like 5 to 3 really is what I would do. And then I would narrow that down, and I would give Tyra 5 photos. And some
Hmm.
shoots, if it was kind of weird, she would ask for more. But I basically would choose the top 5 or 10 photos, and then
Hmm.
she would choose the final photo. I would personally put a check mark on what I thought was the best out of the 5 or 10. Sometimes that didn't get chosen. So, it really came down to, and that was my opinion, but, I was the creative director, and, Tyra being a legendary model and businesswoman and has broken down so many doors, she had her vision of what the best photo was. So that's how that would happen.
Okay.
A lot of questions about what our favorite photo shoot was. I think we talked about it. Stephen Sanasco asked, what was the process of creating the drag photo shoot cycle? Natasha seemed to have everyone on the floor laughing during her session, and a lot of the Drag Race alums appeared in the photo shoot. So I don't remember quite what happened with Natasha. Was it because of the way she was acting? I remember everyone was cracking up. Like, I do remember something, but I don't remember what happened.
I just saw it, and she was hip hop. Like, she had to be like this, like, you know,
That's right.
sort of Vanilla Ice character. And
Yeah.
then I just saw it, and then she had cleverly figured out how to take the silvery paper from pieces of gum, and she created her own grill. Yeah, and which was very inventive, and it helped us all out. We're like, okay, fine, sure, do it. Because she was like, look, I have silver teeth. It's cool, right? I was like, really cool. Yeah, go for it. Do it.
She was cool. I liked her energy. She had a really good energy, I remember. Lucy Bishbash asked, did you only see the girls on set, or did you ever socialize with them when the cameras weren't rolling? And she also asked, were there any girls who we just couldn't stand? You know, we weren't, the way the show worked, as Sutan, you just said it, when we would call, there were these moments where we would say on ice. On ice meant cameras were repoing out of the car or da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
We tried to shoot everything as reality, meaning the girls would roll out of their car, the cameras would shoot them walking into wherever, then they'd go on ice, pose, the cameras have to repo to inside where we were set up, because the shoot really was kind of under my domain. I'd set up the location and everything, and then the reality cams came into my world, and you and everybody was there. So then the girls were then cued in to walk in, where then we tried to we rolled in real time for the photo shoot. So at that time, we would just roll, and they'd see me and you guys for the first time. But there was really no time the cameras weren't rolling on photo shoot days.
Right.
So we would just socialize, but a lot of it doesn't even make the edit. Because remember, the photo shoot segment is only, 11, 12 minutes out of the show? Yeah. And we shoot 14 hours. So there were a lot of times, even during lunch with these girls, I mean, they'd roll on stuff, but we would really kiki with them and have fun. I have some great memories with the girls.
I think that by the time the girls got to us, it was like a moment of just like relief, because they got to have a little bit of fun and see different people. And although you were in the position of sort of guiding them through it, they still found you as a comforting person to get to. I'm sure they probably looked forward to coming to the photo shoots, because we got to play around a little bit and and feel, and they got that feeling of just like being at home again and comfortable and just letting go and not having to deal with the other girls directly. So and you
guys were all their family, like you, Christian, Charlotte. Like, it was a little family unit. So it was a hangout time. And even though the girls weren't allowed cameras on set, obviously I could break the rule. I always had my little Sony point and shoot, whatever. And I have so many great fun outtake shots of all of us together. Even when we did the bullfighting shoot in the bull ring a couple of seasons before, I've got great shots of all of us posing with the girls. Even in China, posing with the girls on the Great Wall. It's you, me, and we're all serving with the girls. Stuff that the fans never got to see, but we had a lot of fun with them.
That to me, I mean, like, again, if we ever had an opportunity to sit down and talk about all of the seasons we had together, but China was pretty fucking epic. Like,
that's next week. You might have to come back and do next week's, because that's a real.
Call me in. I will wake up early for this.
Because you do know China has the most drama, which I'm just gonna save that, because there's some major tea about Cycle 9 that I think people would gag with.
Well, there was also like these sort of like I remember in China. We're not even talking about that season.
Yeah, we'll save it. We'll save it.
But remember when we were at the Great Wall and we couldn't like take pictures or like
that scoop?
Yeah.
Because there was major drama.
And I just like stayed in the trailer because I was scared, because there was like all these Chinese officials who were making sure that we were not like making fun of the culture. And it was very, very interesting day. Anyway, so Cycle.
We'll get to that. Cycle 9, but Cycle 8. Another question. People are asking, were we surprised that Natasha, this is Anna period Balby asked, are we surprised that Natasha made it that far? Because she was in the final two. Oh, you're rocking. What,
Yeah.
what was that? Were you surprised?
Now what? I mean, like it's still playing right now with the sound down, so I'm still kind of watching it in my peripheral. But I was actually a little shocked. I thought that Brittany would have made it further because she had done so well, and she was a great model. She was a really, really great model. And I mean,
Brittany was eliminated like 3 episodes before. I remember being shocked by Brittany's elimination. I just thought, I wonder what that was about. But I wasn't on that panel, and I just,
The episode that's playing right now is where they've already taken out the weave. Because remember, we were like, kill it. Let's
kill the weave.
That poor little thing is suffering.
I remember Christian Mark was like, thank the gods, because he was so sick of trying to deal with that weave. I remember, you know, Christian is just, he's so easygoing, but even he was like, girl, can we lose it?
Yeah. Because all
so
that was left was of that weave was probably about a toupee size that was at the top of her crown. And the rest was just, it was terrible. Anyway.
Scotty 3103 asked, this is for you, Sutan, can you talk a bit about what it was like to work with Mathew Anderson? And he said, much love from Minneapolis. Thanks, Scotty. Because Mathew is actually how I met you, because Mathew and Danilo were working on the early seasons of the show, season 3, and Mathew brought you in, and I remember just watching you work. I was like, you're like a talented force. So that's how you were brought into the show.
Yes. Let me tell you about a really great moment in my life that you had suggested, and it involves Mathew, is the day that I went and did Iman and Tyra Banks for Oprah's Legends Ball, because Valente who's Tyra's makeup and Iman's, was not available.
And Valente used to be my assistant, and I was the one who assisted, or actually told, when I couldn't do Tyra's makeup anymore and I was on the show, I said, you should use Valente, because, you know, it's all about pay it forward, and Valente still does her makeup to this day, I believe.
Yes, and you paid it forward to me because you were like, hey, Valente's not available, but Matthew's assistant, Sutan. The guy with the long hair, he could probably do it. Yeah. And I remember getting the quote or the rate of what I was going to get, and I was so impressed. But it was probably the most money I'd ever made in my life, because I was just Matthew's assistant. And I gotta say, you know what? And a lot of people are very curious about this, because my involvement in Drag Race was really as a result of RuPaul and Mathew knowing them ahead of time, you know. And I was Matthew's assistant. I was, and I remember. But
you were a force. Yeah, you started off as an assistant, but you're a force unto yourself. You know, but you know that you're humble, which I love. But you were a force. Like, you were an assistant. You're a makeup artist. Like, you're actually like. You're really like an illusion master, which actually is how I describe Raja in my book, FYI, illusion master.
Jay, you're so cute. But no, I think it was a moment for me, because I had followed Mathew since I was in high school. Like, I knew of Mathew and Zaldi, who is, you know,
wardrobe,
amazing. Mathew and Zaldi were a pair during the Club Kid era, and I knew about them. And I actually had a tear sheet from a magazine of both Mathew and Zaldi in one of my folders that I had in high school. Yeah. So when I got to meet Mathew, that in itself was a moment where I was like, what the fuck is going on? This is the person that I idolized. So when the moment came, it actually, when I first had a conversation with Mathew, was at RuPaul's video for a song called How Do I Look? How Do I Feel? And Ru hired me to do one of the characters who was an extra in the video, and she was like, you know, I don't have a ton of money. I have $75. Do you want to come and do it? And I was like, absolutely.
Absolutely. See?
Yeah, and
that's
Mathew,
like the first time I worked with Tyra was for free. Did you know that?
Did not know that.
I worked with her. I was filling
about
in.
Right.
Yeah, it's like you gotta do your thing. So yeah, he offered you $75. You went.
So I went and did the extra. It was a woman of trans experience, a very good friend of mine, Kiwi, who passed away many years ago. But anyway, so I was just there to kind of get her ready, and then Mathew, of course, was and Mike Ruiz shot it.
Oh,
Mike Ruiz was the
of course,
director.
Mike would have, of course,
It
yes.
was the day I met Mike Ruiz,
Oh,
and
wow.
yep, and I remember having a cigarette out on the wall during lunch break, and I was sitting with Mathew, and him and I were not, we weren't really friends yet. He just knew that I performed at the clubs because he'd come with Rue, and I had a conversation with him. I was like, hey, what are you up to these days? He's like, I'm just working on. Have you ever heard of a show called America's Next Top Model? And I was like, yes, bitch. I watch it all the time. I think it was like on Tuesday nights or Wednesday nights.
It
Or
was
whatever.
Tuesdays early on. It was a Tuesday. We moved nights.
Tuesdays.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we went to Thursdays or whatever. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I said, of course I have. I was like, that's wonderful. I'm like, that sounds like a really fun project. And he was like, yeah, I think I kind of like it. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
And then
And
you
so
were hooked.
weeks later, he called me up and he's like, I need your help. I need an assistant. At the time, he only had 2 assistants.
And that was cycle 3 was when he first brought you in, and it was the alter ego photo shoot. I remember.
Yes. And I remember meeting Janice Dickinson for the first time and being completely terrified of her. And
like most people.
But I was so new. I was pretty much fresh from the Mac counter. I had recently, like maybe a few months before that, had just gotten fired from Mac, and I thought that was the end of my life. And then all of a sudden, this
and then your real life took off from there.
Yeah,
you went on to do like everything that you've accomplished, which is, again, and it's so crazy because we're almost at the end of our hour, but everyone's chiming in on things, but your talent is something that really helped make all of that creative, and the creative was the core of that show. I've always felt like we were kind of blessed by you being there for so many cycles, and I know some of those cycles they wore on you were like, girl, I don't know if I got another cycle in me, and then you'd be there next cycle.
I'm such a huge pot smoker now. I never actually smoked pot while I was working on America's Next Top Model until the very last few seasons.
And you were
and then I was like, I need to calm the fuck down. These girls are getting to me.
So you know what? Since we probably have even so much more to break down.
We really do.
I would have loved to do Cycle 9 with you next week if you would join me on Cycle 9's breakdown next Friday. Are you free next night? At 9 a.m. You'll get up?
I will get up. I'm pretty sure that I'll be awake at 9 in the morning.
Because Cycle 9 is
we have so much to talk about.
So juicy. Cycle 9 is so juicy to talk about. And one of the questions which we didn't get to, well, actually, no, we can get it as our last question. Someone asked was like, did we ever butt heads on creative on set? Did we ever butt heads?
Never.
I think it's because a lot of the times, because if you did want to, like if I literally said, okay, here's the creative, this is what we're doing. Often the way I work is I love the team to bring them to the table. But with you, if you didn't love like the direction, you're always very diplomatic. You'd say, well, what if we went, and you'd present another idea, but you always did it in a way that was very non-confrontational. So I was always like, do you? But I don't think we ever butt heads like that.
No, in fact, as I started working for America's Next Top Model, I never realized that our relationship actually during that time would have grown so much. Like even while
because we worked on other projects outside of the show,
and you were doing a shit ton of other projects, and your career was like going. I mean, I remember doing the QVC stuff with you in Philadelphia.
Style Her Famous. I was like, you want to work on the show?
Speaking of, oh my God. Or just going to all the award shows. The first time I ever went to the Oscars red carpet, the first time I ever went to the Golden Globes, the Emmys, the Grammys, was all with you, and we had such a good time. We never butt heads. I remember, just quickly before we go, I remember you first introducing the iPhone 1. Do you remember that?
God, I totally remember. I was obsessed with the iPhone 1. Yes.
We were in.
I know, I'm such a tech nerd.
You were so techie. I was like not getting it because we were all BlackBerry, addicted at the time. I remember you showing it to me. You're like, look at this new machine. Anyway, We'll talk about it next week.
So we'll dive in next week. Thanks guys for tuning in. And like next Friday, we'll do Cycle 9, which has so much tea and juice and drama, stuff that people are going to talk about, because it's the type of stuff that no one's heard of, and it's kind of big drama. Cycle 9 when we went to China, so big drama. And we'll dig in next week.
Yep. In fact, my television is already on Amazon Prime. I will watch Cycle 9 now.
Cycle 9. To remind
myself. In the meantime, you know, before we exit, I would like to just tell everybody that's watching right now to make sure that in November you put your votes in.
Please vote.
Voting is the most important thing in our time right now. There is nothing more effective that you can actually. You know, not all of us can. Not many people can donate money into some of the causes, but at the very least, in November, put your vote in and make sure you vote for the right side of history. That's all.
And we can't do like last voting cycle where about half the voting public stayed home. If you don't like either candidate, it's not about that. It's about affecting change. For
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Wait, Jay, quickly. Hold on, quickly. When was the last time I saw you, like in person?
In person. It wasn't the last. I've seen you post working on the show, but I don't remember where it was. It was at something in LA.
Maybe.
I can't remember.
It's just so nice to see you.
I know. Good to see you too. Yay. Next Friday. We'll have fun.
Okay,
Cycle 9.
It's a date.
Bye,
Love you, darling. Bye you guys. Bye.